Have you ever found yourself standing beneath the towering steel racks of a massive retail warehouse, bathed in the hum of industrial fluorescent lighting, staring at an 85-inch television or a sprawling modular sectional sofa, and feeling a sudden, paralyzing wave of hesitation? The air in these cavernous spaces is designed to be still, almost timeless, encouraging you to wander and consume. Yet in that specific moment of a high-ticket decision, the world narrows down to a single, very familiar and incredibly anxious thought. What if this is the wrong choice? What if the picture quality degrades, the fabric tears, or it simply doesn't fit the space the way you imagined? This phenomenon, universally recognized as buyer's remorse, is a deeply ingrained psychological reflex. We are evolutionarily wired to fear the loss of resources, and spending a significant portion of our hard-earned money on a physical object triggers the exact same neurological pathways associated with risk and danger. But what millions of people pushing those oversized metal carts do not fully realize is that they are actively overlooking a profound structural benefit that they have already acquired. Behind every single product stacked on those concrete floors lies a return policy that is fundamentally engineered to eliminate almost all financial risk, shifting the burden of uncertainty entirely away from the consumer and onto the corporation. Once you truly comprehend the hidden mechanics of how this system operates, the complex logistics that make it possible, and the unwritten social contract it demands, you can confidently commit to those massive purchases without a shadow of hesitation. Consider, for instance, the most fundamental human purchase, food. There is a deeply ingrained societal norm, an unspoken rule we all learn from childhood, that dictates our behavior around groceries. If you buy it, and you open it, you own it. You are burdened with the consequences of your choice. We have all experienced the sinking feeling of purchasing a bulk item, perhaps a massive 2-pound bag of premium roasted nuts that boasted an incredibly attractive price per ounce, only to get home, tear open the seal, and discover that the flavor profile is entirely off. Perhaps they are overly salted, or worse, they carry that faint, unmistakable bitterness of rancid oils. Under normal circumstances, at a traditional grocery store, your options are bleak. You either force yourself to consume a subpar product through sheer willpower to avoid the guilt of wasting money, or you relegate that bag to the darkest corner of your pantry, allowing it to silently expire until you inevitably throw it away months later. But within this specific warehouse ecosystem, the narrative does not have to end in quiet resignation. You possess an alternative route that feels almost illegal in its generosity. You can physically bring that opened, partially consumed bag back to the service desk and request a full refund. The critical metric here is not whether the tamper-evident seal is broken or if the product remains pristine. The only metric that truly matters is whether your subjective experience aligned with your initial expectations. There are documented everyday occurrences where customers have returned fresh produce, such as watermelons or cantaloupes, after completely slicing them open at home. From the outside, the fruit presented beautifully, but internally, the flesh was mealy, overripe, or entirely devoid of sweetness. In these highly specific situations, the return is accepted without friction. This operational choice demonstrates a radical philosophy. They are not merely distributing calories. They are financially underwriting the quality of your personal consumption experience. It is a staggering departure from the rigid, self-protective policies of standard retail. Yet this boundless flexibility is heavily reliant on a delicate balance of mutual respect. In practical, everyday application, employees navigating these transactions have observed a pragmatic boundary. If roughly 50% or more of the product remains intact, the refund is processed with mechanical efficiency. You simply state that the flavor was unpleasant or the texture was wrong, and the capital is returned to you. But the moment you attempt to return a decimated bag of chips containing only crumbs or, famously, a large bakery sheet cake with only a single frosted slice remaining, you cross an invisible line. These egregious attempts test the limits of the system and are the precise reason why sophisticated back-end algorithms have been implemented to monitor the frequency and nature of every single return, silently judging whether you are a dissatisfied consumer or an opportunistic liability. Beyond the perishable goods, there is an overarching safety net that most individuals entirely forget the moment they sign their names on the dotted line. It is the membership fee itself. A vast majority of the population willingly hands over anywhere from $65 to $130 annually, treating it as a sunken cost, a mandatory toll required simply to walk through the front doors. If, after several months of navigating the crowded aisles and buying bulk paper towels, you realize the lifestyle doesn't suit you, or you simply aren't utilizing the warehouse frequently enough to justify the upfront cost, you might assume that money is gone. This is how the entire modern subscription economy operates. Gyms, streaming platforms, and software services rely heavily on the friction of cancellation and the absolute finality of the initial charge. But here, the paradigm is inverted. Your membership fee acts as a fully refundable insurance policy for your entire annual shopping experience. Customers have routinely walked up to the counter after 10 or 11 months of active purchasing and stated that the service simply didn't align with their needs anymore. The result is a complete unprorated refund of the entire membership cost. This is not a hidden loophole or a rogue employee making a generous exception. It is a foundational pillar of their business strategy. To understand why a multi-billion-dollar corporation would willingly forfeit guaranteed revenue, you have to look at their unique economic architecture. Their profit margins on actual merchandise are razor-thin, deliberately suppressed to hover around 11 to 13%, which is drastically lower than the markups seen in traditional supermarkets. The lifeblood of their massive profitability is derived directly from those collected membership fees. Therefore, they are willing to refund your fee even after extensive use because their ultimate goal is not to trap you for a single year, but to cultivate a lifetime of unshakable consumer trust. Currently, the membership renewal rate consistently hovers around an astonishing 93%. If this liberal refund policy were causing catastrophic financial hemorrhaging, that retention metric would be mathematically impossible to sustain. Instead, it functions as the ultimate psychological lubricant. When a prospective shopper knows, with absolute certainty, that they can reclaim their entire entry fee at any given moment, the perceived risk of joining drops to zero. You do not have to conduct complex cost-benefit analyses in your head before signing up. You are free to experiment with the ecosystem, secure in the knowledge that if the experiment fails, you are made entirely whole. When we transition from groceries and subscriptions into the high-stakes realm of consumer electronics, the psychological barriers to purchase become significantly steeper. There is a pervasive, almost instinctual assumption that once you hand over thousands of dollars for a complex piece of technology, you are permanently tethered to whatever quirks, defects, or disappointments it may hold. This anxiety is amplified with items like massive televisions, high-end laptops, or intricate smartwatches. But within these walls, a vast protective buffer zone has been constructed, granting you an incredibly rare commodity in the tech world: the luxury of time. You are afforded exactly 90 days from the moment the receipt is generated to integrate that device into your daily life. This is not a cursory 15-minute test in a brightly lit showroom with a hovering salesperson. This is 3 full months to evaluate the black levels of an old screen in your own darkened living room, to push the processor of a laptop through your actual daily workflow, or to discover those maddening software glitches that only reveal themselves after weeks of continuous operation. Imagine investing $3,000 in a home theater display. The first week is a honeymoon phase, but by day 45, you notice a subtle, distracting band of light bleeding from the edge of the panel during dark movie scenes. In almost any other retail environment, attempting a return at that late stage would result in outright rejection or a grueling battle with the manufacturer's restrictive warranty department. Here, the process remains frictionless. You box it up, bring it back within that 90-day window, and your capital is restored. However, this specific 3-month limitation is actually a compromise, born from a fascinating piece of retail history. Over a decade ago, the electronics return policy was essentially infinite. What naturally followed was a spectacular display of human opportunism. Consumers would purchase top-of-the-line televisions in late January, host massive cinematic Super Bowl parties in their homes, and then casually return the slightly used screens in mid-February for a full refund, treating the warehouse as a free high-end electronics rental agency. The sheer volume of this predictable seasonal abuse forced the implementation of the 90-day boundary to protect the company's bottom line. Yet, even with this restriction, it remains an industry-leading standard. But the protection does not abruptly vanish on day 91. In a quiet, often overlooked maneuver, the retailer routinely extends the manufacturer's standard 1-year warranty into a full second year of coverage at absolutely no additional cost to the consumer. Furthermore, they operate an entirely internal technical support division. Before you ever have to unplug a malfunctioning device and drag it back across town, you have access to dedicated troubleshooting experts who can often resolve complex software conflicts or connectivity issues remotely. It is a multi-layered defense system designed to ensure that a high-ticket tech purchase, never devolves into a source of long-term regret. This philosophy of extreme buyer protection extends even into the most delicate, heavily scrutinized corners of luxury retail: fine jewelry. When an individual contemplates purchasing a diamond ring or an intricate gold necklace valued at tens of thousands of dollars, the emotional and financial pressure is immense. The fear of being misled regarding the clarity, cut, or true market value of the stone is a powerful deterrent. Surprisingly, the exit option remains fully available for these astronomical purchases, though the mechanics of the transaction shift dramatically to account for the stakes involved. You can absolutely return a pristine diamond, but you will not experience the instant gratification of a cash refund at the standard customer service counter. When you present a high-value piece of jewelry for return, the staff will accept the physical item, but the financial reversal is paused. The product is immediately secured and shipped out to an independent, highly specialized third-party gemology laboratory. This external verification process, which can take up to a full week, is a mandatory step to mathematically prove that the diamond being returned is the exact specific stone that was originally sold. It might seem like a bureaucratic delay, but it is a vital defense mechanism against sophisticated retail fraud. The history of high-end commerce is littered with incidents where highly skilled scammers have successfully swapped flawless, valuable stones for chemically identical but worthless synthetic moissanite or low-grade cubic zirconia before initiating a return. When dealing with inventory where a single misidentified microscopic inclusion can alter the value by thousands of dollars, trust must be replaced by empirical verification. A crucial element that many ambitious buyers neglect is the strict chain of custody regarding paperwork. For any diamond exceeding 1 carat, the return is entirely contingent upon providing the original, unblemished certification documents from elite grading authorities like the Gemological Institute of America. If those specific papers are misplaced, the stone loses its verified identity, and the return process grinds to an immediate, insurmountable halt. This is why seasoned purchasers of luxury goods treat the original box and documentation with the same reverence as the item itself. Counterintuitively, this rigorous, almost interrogative return process serves as a massive psychological comfort to the buyer at the moment of purchase. Knowing that the retailer forces its own merchandise to undergo independent, microscopic scrutiny before issuing a refund implies that their initial sourcing and selling standards must be equally, if not more, rigorous. It creates an atmosphere of verifiable authenticity, drastically reducing the pervasive anxiety of being overcharged for subpar jewelry in a notoriously opaque market. But perhaps the most fascinating, heavily debated, and surreal aspect of this entire retail ecosystem involves the return of long-term, heavily utilized household goods. If you spend enough time observing the service desk, you will inevitably witness scenes that defy traditional logic. A massive king-size memory foam mattress, clearly indented from 2 years of continuous human habitation, being rolled onto a flatbed cart for a full refund. A heavy-duty outdoor propane grill, weathered, greased, and slightly rusted from enduring 3 harsh winters, successfully exchanged for the original purchase price. These occurrences sound like exaggerated urban myths, but they are tangible manifestations of a policy that refuses to establish arbitrary expiration dates on the concept of quality. Unlike consumer electronics with their rigid, heavily enforced 90-day clocks, mundane household infrastructure like sofas, dining sets, and appliances are judged on a much more subjective, fluid timeline of expected performance. If a product deteriorates at a radically accelerated rate compared to what a reasonable consumer would anticipate, the avenue for a refund remains open. Imagine investing $1,000 into a premium mattress, expecting a decade of proper spinal support. If, after merely 18 months, the core structural foam collapses, creating a permanent, uncomfortable trench that destroys your ability to sleep, this is not categorized as normal, expected wear and tear. It is a fundamental failure of the product's intended utility. In these instances, the company absorbs the loss, effectively honoring an unspoken lifetime guarantee of structural integrity. The same logic applies to outdoor equipment. If the powder-coated steel of a patio heater begins flaking and corroding rapidly despite being stored under a protective cover, the flaw lies in the manufacturing metallurgy, not the consumer's usage. However, this is precisely where the gray area of the policy creates friction, and where the keen eye of the employee becomes the final arbiter of justice. The critical distinction is the philosophical line between a defective product and a product that has simply reached the natural, exhausted end of its lifespan. A mattress that sags dramatically in year 2 is a defect. A mattress that gradually loses its firmness and shape over 7 years of daily use has simply fulfilled its destiny. The flexibility of the warehouse is vast, but it is not blind. Employees possess the absolute authority to reject returns if the item displays clear signs of malicious neglect, intentional damage, or absurdly prolonged usage. Bringing back a set of vehicular tires that are completely bald, down to the steel warning threads, and demanding a refund because they are no longer safe is a violation of the policy's intent. The system is designed to protect consumers from poor craftsmanship, not to subsidize the eternal, cost-free replacement of depreciating assets. It relies heavily on a delicate, often tested balance of corporate generosity and consumer integrity. Underpinning this entire massive operation of reverse logistics is an invisible, highly sophisticated data architecture that completely revolutionizes the consumer experience. We have all been conditioned by decades of traditional retail to hoard flimsy slips of thermal paper. We shove receipts into shoeboxes, wallets, and kitchen drawers, living with the persistent anxiety that if an expensive coffee maker suddenly shorts out 6 months down the line, we will be entirely powerless without that specific faded piece of paper to prove our purchase. But within this specific warehouse environment, the paper receipt is nothing more than a temporary formality. The moment your personal membership card is scanned at the register, every single item, from a massive leather sectional down to a single bottle of vitamins, is permanently coded and anchored to your digital identity. This creates an unbroken, infinitely searchable database of your entire consumer history. If a vacuum cleaner you purchased during a holiday sale 3 years ago simply stops powering on, you do not need to embark on a frantic archaeological dig through your home office. You simply walk up to the counter, present your membership card, and provide a vague approximation of the timeline. The staff can effortlessly filter your years of purchasing data, isolate the specific transaction, verify the original price paid, and initiate the refund process in a matter of seconds. This invisible infrastructure fundamentally alters the psychology of ownership. It entirely eradicates the low-level, chronic stress of maintaining physical proof of purchase for thousands of dollars worth of goods. When you realize that the burden of record-keeping has been completely offloaded to corporate servers, your purchasing behavior shifts. You become significantly more willing to take a chance on a new high-ticket appliance or an unfamiliar brand of power tools, secure in the knowledge that your right to a refund is digitally immortalized. For those who wish to streamline the process even further, the proprietary mobile application acts as a digital vault, cleanly categorizing every in-store and online transaction into scannable barcodes. The true profound value of this system is not merely the speed of the transaction, but the absolute peace of mind it provides. It is an invisible safety net that constantly runs in the background of your life, ensuring that you are never left fighting a bureaucratic battle over a lost slip of paper. Yet, for all its legendary permissiveness, this retail utopia is not without its absolute boundaries. There are specific, rigid dead zones within the warehouse where the generous safety net completely vanishes, and understanding these exceptions is vital to avoiding significant financial missteps. The first and perhaps most surprising limitation involves the purchase of alcohol and tobacco products. In a vast number of jurisdictions, the inability to return these items is not a corporate decision, but a strict, non-negotiable legal mandate designed to prevent the unauthorized distribution and tampering of controlled substances. You could purchase a highly expensive, vintage bottle of wine for a celebration, realize an hour later that you selected the wrong vintage, and return to the store with the cork entirely undisturbed. Despite the product being perfect, the return will be legally blocked. The transaction is instantly final the moment you leave the building, making every selection in the liquor aisle a high-stakes, irreversible decision. Similarly, the warehouse has recently become a major distributor of physical gold bullion and precious metal bars. Because the value of these assets is intrinsically tied to hyper-volatile global commodities markets, where prices fluctuate by the minute, returns are strictly prohibited. If a consumer were allowed to return gold, they could effortlessly exploit the system, buying when the market is high and returning the asset for a full refund the moment global prices crash, forcing the retailer to absorb catastrophic market losses. Therefore, purchasing physical gold is a permanent commitment. Furthermore, the massive racks of discounted third-party gift cards, offering bundled value for restaurants and entertainment, are entirely non-refundable. The moment the transaction is complete, the digital value is transferred to the third-party vendor, making the process technologically irreversible. Finally, utility items with highly predictable, heavily measured lifespans, such as automotive batteries and tires, operate entirely outside the standard return philosophy. These items are governed strictly by their own specific prorated warranty metrics based on exact mileage or months of use. You cannot return a car battery after 4 years simply because you are dissatisfied with its performance. Your only recourse is navigating the specific depreciating terms of the manufacturer's warranty. The clarity of these boundaries is usually communicated through subtle signage, but failing to internalize them can lead to sudden, expensive friction at the service desk. Ultimately, the most critical aspect of this entire sprawling return ecosystem is the silent, algorithmic judgment that occurs behind the scenes. There is a deeply held yet rarely discussed reality regarding the consequences of systematically abusing this trust. The fact that returning items is incredibly easy does not imply that it can be done infinitely and without consequence. The same sophisticated data infrastructure that effortlessly pulls up your lost receipts is also quietly compiling a highly detailed profile of your behavioral patterns. The system monitors the ratio of your overall spend against the total dollar amount of your returns. It analyzes the frequency of your visits to the service desk and categorizes the specific reasons you provide for bringing items back. This allows the corporation to easily differentiate between a family experiencing a run of bad luck with household appliances and a serial opportunist utilizing the warehouse as a free rotating wardrobe and rental service. When a customer attempts to return a laser printer after 3 years of heavy use, falsely claiming it is defective simply because the toner cartridges are finally empty, or when they repeatedly bring back seasonal clothing clearly stained and stretched from months of wear, the individual transaction may be denied, but the larger consequence is triggered in the database. The account is flagged for high-level executive review. If the pattern of exploitation is deemed intentional and chronic, the corporation will exercise its ultimate right of refusal. They will instantly and often permanently revoke the individual's membership, forcibly removing them from the ecosystem. This outcome is far more common than people realize. Countless individuals have found themselves suddenly locked out, their annual fees refunded, and their access to the warehouse permanently severed with zero avenue for appeal. From a purely logistical standpoint, this ruthlessness is essential for survival. The reverse supply chain is incredibly expensive. When an item is returned, it must be physically inspected, repackaged, discounted, liquidated to secondary markets, or in many cases, entirely destroyed and thrown into a compactor. The labor and logistical costs associated with managing perfectly good items returned for fraudulent reasons would rapidly obliterate the razor-thin margins that keep the warehouse prices so aggressively low. The harsh reality is that the entire low-cost ecosystem is subsidized by the vast majority of honest shoppers, and the corporation will ruthlessly prune those who threaten that delicate economic balance. The policy is a magnificent shield against genuine product failure and honest buyer's remorse, but it is a fragile social contract. When utilized with respect and common sense, it remains the single most powerful consumer protection mechanism in modern retail, allowing you to navigate massive warehouses and make life-altering purchases with absolute, unshakable peace of mind.